Hi, I'm Lulu. I'm a compulsive overeater, and today's recording is going to be about our conception of God that is suggested as the solution to our problem. We have powerlessness is our problem, power is our solution, and how do we find that power? So when I was uh, first doing my step work, my God of my understanding was like zippity doo dah, like nothing. I had no spiritual practice whatsoever. I had no belief in God. I was a little offended by it. I just didn't want to talk about this like invisible man that supposedly does all this wonderful stuff. I don't know. I just was closed minded. So basically, it was presented to me that you better get a whole new level of open-mindedness if you want this program to be successful, because this is where this quote unquote weight loss program works differently than any other. So I did all the other ones, and I didn't want to do those again. They don't work. So I just found that new level of open-mindedness. I thought I was coming from a disadvantage because I had no higher power. Now I have to create one. My sponsor pointed out to me, there are people that have a concept of a higher power. They have a religion that they're practicing. But there's something about it that's not working for them in their lives as they continue to compulsively overeat and feel like they need to stuff their problems down with food. It's like, how come the God of your understanding and your religion isn't working for you there? So what those people needed to do was to kind of redefine things for themselves. And my sponsor said, that can be more challenging than starting from nothing. And I was just like, oh, wow, well, that felt great. Because like I said, everybody that talked about religion in meetings, I was jealous of them. I was thinking, oh, it's going to be easy for them to sit and do this third step prayer and stuff because they already do that stuff. But I was wrong. I was mistaken about that. So for all of us, it's equally challenging to find a conception of God that is going to restore me to sanity. So today we have we have something different today. Yay! And we have a panel of 3 people that have done this work. They have recovered from a hopeless state of body and mind. Are they all perfect? Am I perfect? Are we all perfect? No, that's why we keep coming back. We keep coming back, and there's always work to be done. There's the next best version of ourselves just waiting to emerge. And then when we emerge into that, there's another one. And it's an endless journey of spiritual enlargement. So what these people have in common is they all came into this program with an active religion that they were practicing. And that was a big part of their lives. And now they were brought into steps 1, which were fine. You study step 1, you learn about your powerlessness. You move into 2 and 3, that can get a little tricky because now we're talking about coming up with our own conception of God and how that's going to work. So basically it's about these people's examples. There's 3 different religions, active participation and involvement in their religions, and they've meshed together their religion with the idea of the power greater than ourselves that is going to work with us. We're going to have a relationship with. It's like a kind of a new kind of angle. Mesh them together to a really beautiful spiritual space. And so we're going to just kind of like do 10 minutes each, just about their journey and their difficulties, or the work that they did to mesh these 2 together into a working relationship in their life, so that they feel like they have that higher power. And I had a hard time saying God because I didn't want to say God. And now I can easily say God. And there's people in their religions that they don't refer to that higher power as God. and they're finding themselves saying God, and it's like you can say God without you without getting all into the semantics of it. It's just kind of like it's just God. And anyway, so we're gonna call our first person. They don't know which order I'm gonna call them, so Shalise, why don't you go first? And Shalise is gonna
Yay, step it up.
step it up, step it up, step it up.
And I'm so excited for this opportunity to be here with this panel of people. And thank you, Lulu, for the invitations, extending the invitations to a couple of my favorite people, and just for the opportunity of hearing their experience and adding their experience, strength, and hope to ours to share with the people of the world. Since we're on YouTube, anyone could access this, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to time myself too. So let me just toggle over real quick.
Yeah,
okay.
I can't be trusted to time. I
knew I
miserable
couldn't.
fail.
I knew I couldn't ask you, so we got this. Okay, so my name's Shalise. I'm a compulsive eater and food addict in Phoenix, Arizona. My journey began 6.5 years ago in Bangor, Maine. I have grown up. I grew up in a religious home, and I feel inspired to share that I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and also known as Mormons. So, and I share that. I don't know that it necessarily matters in this setting that we're talking here, but I do want to make it available for anyone who might be the same religion and having similar questions or having a similar journey, that they could really identify with what I'm saying here, because it's important to me. So 6.5 years ago, my life was a complete disaster, falling apart. My marriage was not looking great. I was an emotional and physical wreck, nearing 200 pounds in my 5'4" frame, very, very close to the morbidly obese range. And it was a challenging experience for me as I had gone through, the ups and downs of my physical journey, but my emotional journey was, I was a wreck. I was an absolute wreck. And part of there was a huge part of a challenge in my mind that really had to do with the religion that I grew up in. There, I harbored a lot of resentment due to some events that just really don't matter, just don't matter today. But I held a lot of resentments. Toward members of my church, toward things in my church history, towards leaders, and all sorts of, we're talking a lot of resentment. And my first step was with my first sponsor was just beautiful. It was I just given everything that I needed right when I needed it. And that continues today. Abstinence was the first thing. I did work through I did work 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with her, and a partial 6 and 7. Anyway, moved out of state, ended up feeling like I needed to change sponsors, and so grateful for what she gave me, because without her, I wouldn't have a solid step 1 today. But I was at a point in my journey about 3 years in where I was ready for a change, and I knew something else needed to happen, or I was not going to. I could just tell that I would not be able to remain abstinent on my own. And so I switched sponsors, and she helped me again. I said, take me through the steps as though I've never been through them. And she started to take me through them, and I'm like, I've never been through them. But I had gotten what I needed right up to that point. And I don't think that my first experience, my first sponsor prepared me for what I needed to take through on this second time through. And when we got to step 4, my sponsor was like, okay, I want you to do 50 resentments, 50 resentments. And there were 25 of those that were towards my own religion. And I was like, I was like, okay, are you sure? Are you sure you're wanting to do this? And it was such an amazing experience going through the writing process, first of all. And I'm just still, very self-righteous, and everybody needs to change, and everybody needs to do this, and they're not doing this right. And they're, oh, da, da, da. With the help of my sponsor and going through step 5, every single one of those resentments that I held towards my religion and towards the other people in my religion and towards all of that just absolutely came unraveled. I did not have a leg to stand on. I did not have a leg to stand on. Not only did I not have a leg to stand on, but I just was able to see and feel that it was my conception of God that was really getting in the way of and causing those resentments. And so I needed a reconstruction. I needed to reconstruct how I believed in God. And there was a lot for me at first. It was like, oh, I don't know. Can I be a part of this religion? Because I'm like, I still love it, and there's still so much about it. Can I be a part of this religion and also be a member of OA? Because aren't they in conflict? And my sponsor helped me to see that not only are they not in conflict, but they totally support each other. If you're a member of my church, you know of the 13 Articles of Faith. And I had this thing where I was just like, oh, I don't know. In OA, we're teaching that anybody can have whatever conception of God they want. That's just wrong, because in my religion, God is like this, and God is this, and God is this. This is what I was believing. But the 11th Article of Faith states, we claim the privilege of worshiping the Almighty God according to the dictates of our own conscience. We allow all men the same privilege, let them worship how, where, and what they may. And so that for me was just another confirmation that that really actually my religion, OA is just an extension of my faith. It's an extension. And it is my religion, my religious upbringing brought me the what, and OA has brought me the how. OA has brought me how to live the what. I was taught all of these principles and a way to live a good life in my religion, and OA has just showed me. It's kind of been like the gospel for dummies for me. It's like the idiot's guide for how to live this and put it into practice in my life. And so for me, there is no conflict. There is no conflict there. It's not OA and then the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's all the same thing. It's all teaching me. And I would venture to say that any religion, I've just been kind of looking a lot and just kind of seeing it all. If we could just boil it all away, all of it, all the titles, all the labels, everything, it would boil down to one thing, and that would be that there is a power greater than ourselves, that there is purpose in us being here in this life, that I can have that guidance and that connection with that power greater than myself, and that I can serve others and help them, bring them to that same thing and that I can be at peace, that I don't have to be fighting with anything or anyone, that I can be free. I can be free. And there are periods where I don't feel free and I have to work through it, and that's okay. It's actually a beautiful thing, because every time I work through something, that draws me closer to that power. In fact, I think God gives us, that higher power, God, whatever you want to call your conception of God, gives me the opportunities and the challenges for the purpose of drawing near. And that's, sometimes it's not pretty, sometimes it's not fun, but man, I'm so grateful. And I will say one more thing. I'm just going to check my time really quick. If I can figure out how to toggle between screens. Yes. Okay. I've got a minute or two. One thing that was extremely helpful for me not only it was a fourth and fifth step process with my sponsor, who gave me time and love and guidance on how to unravel all these fears and lies about my religion. And in addition to that, she introduced me to, this isn't an OA meeting, so I'm going to just say whatever I'm going to say, to Byron Katie, the work of Byron Katie. And she does the process. It's very similar to the fourth and fifth step. And it's a process of finding truth and process of unraveling fears and lies. And so in addition to working my fifth step with my sponsor every single day, this was after my sponsor introduced me to her. I'd never heard of her work before. I highly encourage you looking it up. But in addition to working with my sponsor, I did a Judge Your Neighbor worksheet every single day for about 90 days. I have a binder full of Judge Your Neighbor worksheets that was also, in addition to the resentments that I had put in my fourth step. These were just kind of thoughts that would come up about my religion as I was kind of battling through that whole thing. But I've got a binder. Okay, my timer rang, but I'm just going to close up here. I've got a binder full of these sheets that helped me to see the truth and find the truth of those lies that would come into my mind. And so I believe that work of just really looking for truth and freedom has kind of just brought me into alignment. And again, there is no conflict with OA, and there is no conflict with my religion today. It's all the same thing to me. It's all the same thing. And that is, take it all away, take all the titles away, take everything else away. And it is me and God. It is me and my higher power. And I'm just so grateful for the guidance that I've received from a sponsor who knew how to show me how to find the truth. This was not how, I did not know how, and I know how today. I'm grateful to pass that on as well to others. And with that, I am going to pass it over to, drum roll please, Kelly MCC, your next step.
Oh, thank you for that, Shalise. Oh, that brought tears to my eyes at various points. Really, really moving. And I actually can relate some. And I think this is an important topic, because a lot of people, I think it's very common that people come in, I hear people having conflict with the religion that they came in with, and, is this going to work with OA? So thank you for having this inspiration to have this group. So because when I speak, usually there tends to be a lot of space between my words. I think my 10 minutes would go by really quickly. So I actually wrote things out because there were things that felt important for me to share. And I will see how this goes and try to be spontaneous as well. So I was asked to share, see if I can do this so I'm not looking away from you too much. I was asked to share on my OA journey of recovery and the spiritual tradition I came in with, which is Buddhism. And when I was asked, I hesitated and I thought, what do I have to offer here? And with encouragement and reflection, I realized that I have a growing and practical relationship with a loving higher power of my own understanding now. And I do have so much more trust in my own independent thinking and more peace around my spiritual tradition than I did when I came into program. So I feel tremendous gratitude for program and for my spiritual tradition, and how I'm finding how they can both support each other and support me in my recovery. And it's an ongoing journey, as Shalise was sharing. So if there's anything I have to share that can be of benefit to anyone listening, I humbly share my story. So currently I am working on 5 through 9 in the way that my sponsor's bringing me through it. And I'm about 2/3, maybe a little more through that. Been a very powerful process. So my background is that I came into OA the first time in my early 20s. And when I was a dance major in college, and I was out of control with self-destructive behaviors around food and self-destructive thoughts and fears. And I truly believe that I would have died without OA and the power greater than myself that I related to then. And I was in program for about 2 years then, and I worked steps 1 through 3. And then I felt like I had a handle on my issues with food, and I left program. I thought I wasn't powerless anymore. Wrong. So I became a Buddhist, which was immensely helpful to me. And through the practice of meditation, I began the journey of learning to see and be with and work with my thoughts and emotions with kindness and with insight. Buddhism doesn't talk about a power greater than myself as God, but it does talk about interconnectedness and sacredness of all things as they are, and a basic goodness of ourselves and others in the universe, a basic nature. So, as Shalise was saying, probably at the root of it, there's a whole lot that's same as every other great spiritual tradition of human beings. So in my particular Buddhist tradition, there's language, well, and I guess Buddhism in general, there's language about theism and non-theism. Buddhism being non-theistic, and theism being in the teachings that I was hearing and the way I was hearing them, theism being expecting something outside of yourself to save you. That was really, I interpreted that as being really looked down upon in my tradition. So now I interpret that as very much the same thing as program. It's a program of action. Nothing changes if I don't do anything. So, it's not a program of asking some power outside of myself to just save me without me doing anything. But at the same time, for many years, I interpreted non-theism to mean that believing in God was actually an inaccurate, inferior, unintelligent way of understanding reality. This way of thinking led to an arrogance about my tradition being superior to all others, which is ridiculous. And by interpreting this concept of non-theism in this way, I also cut myself off from the very sacredness and interconnectedness that I was trying to open to through meditation. So I needlessly caused myself to be increasingly conflicted. So for quite a few years after I left OA, things with food were more or less okay, particularly since I was dancing all the time. And so all the activity could more or less compensate for the, out of control eating. When I stopped dancing, things gradually got more and more out of control. My emotional pain and, mental processes were never okay, were never in line with reality, but I was able to function until I wasn't. So in early 2020, which is a year ago for people who are listening to this in the recording, my food was really out of control, and I came back to OA at the end of March of 2020. So however many months ago that is, it's the beginning of February now, so almost a year ago. And so I came back to OA, but I was really attached to my spiritual tradition. I was afraid that all the talk about God that I was hearing in the program meant that people were going to try to convert me to the religion that I had grown up with, had good experience with. And I've heard other people talk about this as well. But actually, nobody tried to convert me, but they only talked about finding a loving power greater than ourselves of our own understanding, and encouraged me to do the same with tremendous openness, tremendous kindness, tremendous love, tremendous just, support for me to find what worked for me. That was my experience across the board with people. I remember in my first few meetings that I had to declare that I was a Buddhist and that I needed my program to work with that. Oh, brother. I came to program because I desperately needed help around food, but I wasn't willing to change my spiritual beliefs or practices. Ironically, I also had a lot of conflicting emotions around my spiritual tradition. My spiritual teacher at the time, members of my Buddhist community, and my religious organization. So I had a lot of conflict around that whenever I came back to the program. And my understanding and relationship to all those things in my tradition were certainly not helping me with my food addiction and the, craziness in my head that was contributing to my food addiction. So the path, so that's like the background. So I feel like there's been quite a journey that in a way has a lot of similarities to Shalise. So the next part is about my journey of how program has helped me with food addiction and with my spiritual tradition working together for me so far. It's an ongoing journey. I had to just be open to finding a power greater than myself that actually helped me. I had no other choice because I was desperate and was completely out of control with food. The way I understood my own spiritual tradition was not helping me with food, and the rest of my life was out of control too. When I first started wholeheartedly to take step 2, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, I felt like I was doing something wrong according to my tradition. And I felt sort of sneaky about it. Like I was going against the beliefs of that tradition, which had been a central part of my life for 30 years. And I felt so afraid to let those beliefs change. I was afraid I'd be lost if I did, even though I was actually quite lost anyway already. Oh dear, I'm at 10 minutes and you're going to give me another 5. Thank you. So what did I have to lose by letting go? And I was desperate and needed to find genuine practical help. I needed to find a power greater than myself that was unlimited love, wisdom, and power that was practically and personally accessible to me and could actually help me. So for a time, I just explored what my higher power might be, letting go of myself as a religious person who had accomplished various practices, blah, blah, blah. All that so-called accomplishment wasn't helping me where I really needed it. So what did it matter? I just had to let it go. So I continued to attend meditation gatherings and in my tradition, and there was a growing relationship to a higher power of my own understanding. And I continue to find meditation itself very beneficial in helping me to see my own mind. It's good that this is an anonymous program because that really cut through some of my, self-consciousness. I learned so much from OA meetings, other people, my sponsor, and the big book. I started to have some abstinence one day at a time with the help of my higher power. I could not do that on my own. Then I started working step 4 with my sponsor and found that really helpful. My spiritual teacher few people in my community and even my religious organization were on my resentment list. And I understand this is not uncommon. And as I worked through the 4-step inventory and the turnarounds in step 5, and then, including sort of a process with 6, 7, 8, and 9 in that with my sponsor, I started to see the teachings of my own spiritual tradition in a whole new light. Now I am free to understand my tradition in my own way and to let others do it in their own way. And what did the Buddha say? Don't just take what I say, and swallow it whole. Try it out for yourself. Anyway. So, similar to Solis, actually the program helped me to see that there was no conflict at all. My tradition talks about the unlimited compassion, wisdom, and power that is available when I accept myself and life as it is and let go and see beyond my habitual, fixated, limited thoughts. This is the same thing that program is saying to me. And I'm powerless over these fears and lies, but by relying on a power my ability, a whole new way of living is possible. Seeing and surrendering my fears and lies about myself and the world, I feel free to take what I like and leave the rest of my tradition, which is huge. I also don't feel arrogant about my tradition anymore. I see now that thinking that my tradition was better than any other was just a completely ridiculous lie. I also feel that I study the teachings of my tradition in a whole new light and see how they can help me in my recovery. One of the biggest aha moments for me was to realize that spiritual teachers, the teachings of my tradition, and other community members and my religious organization were not my higher power, but they're there to help me connect with my higher power. That is huge. And by misunderstanding that, I had been causing myself a lot of suffering. This was a huge shift for me. And this shift helped me let go of painful, conflicting emotions I had around my tradition, and to feel more, open to the healing and the journey of it for me, along with program. So now, and I'm almost done. Now, when I practice meditation every day, each out breath, I think of it as a practice of surrendering and of a step 3 of became willing to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand God. And, it's not like there's any sort of perfection about this, but I feel like I'm so grateful for the method of meditation to physically work with surrendering, with my noticing my thoughts and letting go with my breath, over and over and over and over again, just like we do in the program. So, and who knows what'll be revealed, 1 minute, 1 day at a time. So that is a bit about my journey so far. The journey keeps opening up with the help of my higher power and the program and all of you and my sponsor, of course. So grateful to be just another bozo on the bus, traveling with all of you other precious bozos on the path of recovery. I wish you all a good journey with the higher power of your own understanding. Janice.
That was beautiful. Janice, go ahead.
Okay. Hi. Thank you, Kelly. That was great. Shalice, awesome. Amazing. Okay. So I guess, when I was asked to do this, it really gave me pause to think about, where I came from and the connection with God and this program. And my conception of God began when I was a little girl. I was raised Catholic, And I was, my mother was my first teacher. And I, would go to church with her. And she had a little tradition of praying after meals. And I would be the one to follow her in and kneel down, and pray with her. Meanwhile, I had two siblings, an older and a younger, and they kind of just always did their thing. But I really gravitated to kind of following my mother's lead, and of being raised Catholic, and I feel far from perfect, but I've always felt very secure in my home with loving mother and father, and I felt God was part of all of that. So it was really nice for me growing up. And then as I approached adulthood, it was almost too comfortable being in my family's home. I was one that liked to live by the rules. So it was like, tell me what to do and I'll do it. Um, and so now it was time for me to venture out into my own adult life and experience life and be myself. And somehow I connected, like kind of separating from my parents in a way separating from God. And he was there, but I kind of put him on the shelf and said, and kind of took on the philosophy of life, which was one of the songs at that time. And I recently heard it again by Frank Sinatra, My Way. I thought that was how it was supposed to be. You were supposed to be in control of your life and to make decisions, which is very difficult for me. I can see both sides of a lot of things, so I'd much rather somebody else tell me what to do. But I forged ahead thinking this is how life had to be. And so I got married. We started to have a family, and and so with that comes more responsibility. And it seemed like the more responsibility that I got, that I was given, the more confusion I felt, but I knew I had to keep going. So I started to turn to food as a comfort and a way to kind of comfort me. And having children, I have 4 adult children, and they were born between 1974 and 1984, so they're all adults. But with each child, I also saw myself gaining more weight. Now, God was still in the picture, but it was like you pray to God for life and death things. And again, this is my childhood interpretation that I carried with me into adulthood. Nothing in my religion said that, but that's how I interpreted it. Like anything you can do, as someone else said, for yourself, you do. So now I had the responsibility of these children that I was trying to raise. And again, food was my comfort. So with each child, I gradually, I put on some weight, and then I would try the diet clubs, and they never worked. They never worked for me. So in 1984, in 1983, when I became pregnant with my last child, I kind of said to myself, it was always excuses to give permission. I said to myself that I am going to eat whatever I want. I always would look for that excuse, the lies we tell ourselves. And by the time she's a year old, takes you 9 months to have a baby. By the time she's 9 months to a year, I'm going to be thin again because I'm going to do it this time. So she was born, and I thought, well, I can't do it right away. I have to, build up my own, get strong again. So I allowed a few months to go by. And now, in the meantime, someone, my friend's sister had mentioned OA, which was like a seed planted in my brain. And all I knew when I asked her, oh, what's the fad diet, the next fad diet? And whenever she said, oh, wait, she says, I don't know that much about it, but it seems like people don't eat flour and sugar. And I thought, that's ridiculous because all foods in moderation, self-control, that was a biggie. It was big in my family too, because my mother does not have this disease and cannot understand why people just can't eat moderately. And that was never my strength. But anyways, I heard that it planted a seed, but it was on the back burner of my mind. So now I have this child, my fourth child. Just as I'm ready to, buckle down, she's a few months old, my husband develops a subdural hematoma. And it was, which was like a bleed in his head from a bang that he didn't even know how it happened until a couple of years after. Anyways, as I was dealing again with the responsibility and the stress, and I was the one in charge and he was the sick person, and after work, treating him for 6 weeks, he went in for another CAT scan, and they came out and said, we need to do emergency surgery or he's going to be paralyzed or die. So I dealt with it all. And thank you, God. Of course, I was praying to God. Of course, he was there for me. God was always there. It was just, when did I see him? And thank God he pulled out of it. But what was happening to me is that I was just stuffing and stuffing and stuffing. So once the dust settled and I was at my daughter's first birthday, I sat there always with a smile on the outside, but I was dying on the inside because I couldn't even find something to wear that fit me. And I thought, I have got to do something. I'm miserable, and yet I have a wonderful life. I mean, I have so much that I should be grateful for, but I was so sad inside. So that very next weekend, I went to my first OA meeting, and it was in a nursing school, and they opened 2 classrooms. There had to be at least 100 people there. So many people that they had a microphone at the front of the room so the people could speak. I walked in looking for the scale and the leader who was in charge. I found neither of those. So I sat down, and as I looked around, I saw all these thin people and thought, why are they here? Like, what are they doing here? And I didn't know until these people who had a calmness and a peace about them, and they were in a normal body size, as they got up to share their story, I was blown away. They talked about, their 100+ pound weight loss. And each, as person after person got, because of course I was there for the weight. That was it. I just wanted to lose weight. But as they all spoke, each and every person who was working this program talked about God. They talked about a higher power in their life. And it was like, oh my, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The tears started to just come down. I just started sitting there crying. And I'm thinking, they're not all Catholic, okay? They're not my religion. These are people in this room from all different walks of life, all different religions, or no religion at all. And yet they could talk about a higher power working in their life. And I thought, really? You mean I could ask my God to help me with my food? Like that was like, to me, that was like, no, that's vain. You don't ask God for those things. Again, it was my interpretation from my childhood religion that I just kind of dragged along life with me. I joined the program at my second meeting. I got a sponsor, I got abstinent, and it was it was black and white for me to ask God to help me with the food, and it worked. I put the food down. Um, you know, it was not difficult for me to turn my food over to God once I saw how all these people had done it. And I stayed in program for a long time, and my food was good for many, many years because I felt like I was doing steps 1, 2, and 3 pretty well. But and I joined 12-step programs that they had at the time. But every time we finished, it was nothing like the Big Book Step Study. I just kind of went through the motions of it. And once we closed the book, and it was like a closed meeting. Once that meeting ended, I felt like I really did felt like, oh, I can graduate now. You know, I can graduate. I'm done. I did it. Totally did not have the concept of working the whole 12 steps and not applying the first 3 steps into my life. So as the years passed, especially when I stopped working and reading the big book, which was some probably 25 years into program, um, what I never could understand was I wasn't feeling the 9-step promises, some, many of them. I just wasn't getting it. I still had a lot of fear. I had a lot of worry, financial insecurity. There was still things that totally eluded me. But once I actually felt like, okay, I don't need the big book anymore. I'll just go to meetings. Um, it was all downhill. It then became a diet that I began working. And one day thought, after all these years, maybe I'm normal. Maybe I'm really not a compulsive overeater. And I decided to leave OA. And I had to just go out and experience life. And life totally was consuming me. It was consuming me, especially towards the end of program, because I was still trying to control people, places. I was still not letting go. And the more I tried to control, the more I ate. And in those months out of program, it was horrible. I didn't pick up my drugs right away, but about 9 months later, I did. And for a good year and a half of determination and self-will to stop eating, I could not put together one day of abstinence. And it was really, God gave me the gift of desperation one more time. And when I came back into program, crawled back into program, in July 1st. Oh, wow. Boy, 10 minutes does go fast. I'm almost done. When I crawled back into program, July 1st of 2015, um, God, God put this, I thought was a food sponsor in front of me. And she said, oh, I do the big book step study. I meant to say that. And I says, I'll do that too. Well, that changed my life completely, because then, and boy, I can have a hard head, and we used to meet weekly, and the first time we met, all I did was complain about what was going on in my life. It was all about them. And it was through really working these steps. And that's why I'm such an advocate for the big book step study, and not just opening the big book on your own and trying to figure it out. You really need a sponsor, and working through it really is peeling away the layers. And I'm still, and thank you, God, for steps 10, 11, and 12, because now it's like I am powerless, not just over my food, which is all the only part I think I said in those early days, but I'm powerless over my life. And there is a higher power who can restore me to sanity. And I choose today, every morning, I get up and I say the 11-step prayers and turn my will and my life over to the care of God. And the longer I am doing this, the more I can see that when I take my will back, I get this funny feeling, and I know that I need to let go. The other quick note is that um, I was asked by my daughter if I could help my granddaughter learn her CCD. She's in 2nd grade, which is religious education. Am I learning? I'm learning that God was always there for me. God is a loving God. He was always there. It was me who turned my back on him. And her last lesson this past week was how to become the best version of yourself. Like, what more, what better thing can we be? And what are we being by this program? So definitely this program has helped me to see and bring that loving God to me in a way that I kind of kept him on the shelf. And now he's very much a part of my life. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. That was amazing. I just spent the last hour in complete chills and shivers and tears. Everybody's just very moving, just very powerful. And I sure hope whoever's listening to this recording feels the same way. It was wonderful.